The middle mid-range narcissists. Seduction speech. This video demonstrates the mindset of a middle mid-range narcissist who would write in such terms or speak to the victim in this manner. It is a speech that could be said by any subdivision of mid-ranger, but is most likely to come from the middle mid-range type A or middle mid-range type B narcissist. To ascertain which type of narcissist you are involved with or have been involved with, do utilise the Narc Detector consultation, details of which you will find in the video Narc Detector or in the menu bar under Detectors at narcsite.com. The reason that this speech will come most likely from a middle mid-ranger is because it is generated by somebody who thinks that they are a good person and contains pity plays, false martyrdom, and magical thinking applicable to the middle mid-range narcissist. What I will do is detail a section of the speech and then explain to you what aspects of the narcissistic dynamic and the narcissistic indicators are prevalent to aid your understanding. Remember, the speech is what is occurring in the conscious belief of the narcissist. His conscious belief is his actual and genuine belief owing to the blinding effect of his narcissism. Because he's a mid-range narcissist, he's unaware and does not recognize that these words are empty, that certain events never happened. He doesn't either recognize that various forms of manipulation are actually being used because he is blinded to them by his narcissism and they are instinctive. I also, in the narrative, explain some of the empathic traits which his instinctive comments play to, aided and abetted, of course, by the soaring emotional thinking of the victim, who is being conned into believing these words and is actually ignoring the repeated red flags which are being flown here. This exercise is useful for you to understand how you might have been seduced or to guard you against such seduction in the future. Because remember, you are never immune to us. You can only develop a degree of resistance. You may also wish to share this with people so they recognize some of these red flags and understand what it actually means. What position would a recipient of such a speech hold in the narcissist fuel matrix? The recipient would be a candidate, intimate partner, secondary source, meaning that the narcissist instinctively senses that this person could, in due course, be crowned as the intimate partner primary source. There may be other competitors, but they will be shelf intimate partner secondary sources. And the recipient of this speech is the front runner. It is likely that there is an IPPS who is in devaluation and is at risk of shortly being disengaged from should this speech succeed and a seduction occur to win over this candidate IPSS. So, let us embark upon the speech and the supporting narrative. I have always adored you. It is true. You didn't realize it. How could you? I kept my adoration confined to something distant and something remote, always living in hope that one day I would be able to pour my adoration all over you. Infatuation, martyrdom, feeds into the love devotee empathic trait of the victim with regard to the concept of unrequited love, a love burning away unnoticed. How long has this condition lasted for? I would suggest over 10 years. It has not lasted for over 10 years. This is magical thinking, the revision of history, and grandiosity. Narcissism, however, causes in that moment the narcissist to genuinely believe that this adoration has been in place for 10 years, so that when he says that, he's utterly convinced of it, with the aim of you being similarly convinced. Yes, that long. It was when you first joined the company. We worked in separate departments, but I saw you arrive one day, and from that moment I felt this adoration for you. The narcissist actually never noticed the victim at first, because he was in a golden period with somebody else, but of course it sounds far more impressive to suggest such recognition so early on, because this accords with the love-devotee trait of love at first sight. It was strong and powerful and flowed from deep inside of me. I knew in an instant what it was, and I just knew that I had to provide it to you. Grandiosity and martyrdom. I had no idea when that opportunity might arise, when I might be in a position to furnish you with this potent and unending adoration. You did not know this, but I managed to copy your photograph off the company website, and I would lie on my bed or sit in a chair and stare at your picture, wondering when I would be able to provide you with what you deserve. This also never happened. Revision of history combined with grandiosity. Again, the love-devotee trait is being milked by such a seemingly sweet action. Logic, of course, would cause the victim to A. question whether this actually happened, and B. if it did, find it rather creepy and be alarmed by it. I contemplated listening to you, lying beside me and whispering my name, the sensation of your hand in mine, the delight in sharing experiences. Magical thinking and the exhibition of the sense of entitlement, as the narcissist is already picturing the relationship having formed, demonstrating the latent sense of ownership over the victim. This adoration has remained, churning and growing inside of me. I have sustained it and nurtured it for all of this time. Grandiosity and revision of history. The adoration sprang up recently as the necessity of replacing the currently devalued IPPS became pressing. That surely shows just how powerful it is and just how special you are to me. Yes, I know you had no idea. How could you? I kept it to myself as I wanted to save it all for you. Martyrdom, feeding off the love-devotee trait again, with regard to the power of love. Of course, there have been others during those 10 years, but they were just practice for when I would be able to provide that adoration for you. It would, of course, stretch credibility to suggest the narcissist had retained single for such a period of time. A lower mid-range narcissist, his narcissism being less evolved, might just suggest such a thing. Instead, the need for the narcissist to demonstrate that he is a catch, so there have been other partners, remains, but then this is explained away. This is a benign triangulation. I was fond of those supposedly significant others, but let's not you nor I delude ourselves. They came nowhere close to evoking the adoration that I have for you. They actually did back then, because of the infatuation that the narcissist had for them in the golden period. But revision of history applies, arising out of the X's now being painted black. I was not surprised. I understood that from the instant I laid eyes on you, that you were the one. Revision of history, magical thinking. I could not make my move, though, until I had tested myself. You see, I had been let down so many times before. I thought I knew and understood what true adoration was. I had been deceived by impostors and found that they promised much, yet delivered so little. I did not doubt you, but I had to be sure. Martyrdom, pity play, benign triangulation, X's painted as black. Accordingly, I kept my distance, adoring you from afar and pushing my resistance. Each day that passed where I denied myself the chance to give you my adoration was another day where I tested whether that adoration would remain intact. And it was. Martyrdom, magical thinking, revision of history, placing victim on pedestal. You are totally worth all of this effort and pain, and therefore you ought to feel very special. I came through the test. I asked myself many questions, and I found that I was not wanting. This time was the reality. This was true and honest adoration, nothing more and nothing less. I realized as the months became years, the longer I waited, the surer I would become, and moreover, like a grand whisky maturing, the longer I waited, then the more powerful this adoration would be. Grandiosity, revision of history, magical thinking, feeding off the empathic traits of honesty and decency by showing the victim that they did not rush in, when of course the narcissist actually has rushed in. Hypocrisy. I understood that to allow this adoration to grow and build, to test it, to determine whether it had any boundaries and shortcomings would ultimately mean that I would be able to dispense adoration like nobody else could ever do so. I could give you what you deserved, and in return you would provide me with what I wanted and needed. Magical thinking, martyrdom, idealization. This may seem strange, but there almost came a point when I thought that perhaps I would never provide this adoration for you. Pity play, threaten loss. I wondered and considered whether I would be better served by keeping it within myself. Martyrdom. Locking my adoration away, as I always wondered whether it would come undone after another day of waiting and testing. But then I realized that since I adored you so, I could no longer keep this adoration hidden. What person would I be if I did not provide you with the very thing which you deserved? Pity play. I would be failing both you and I. Thus, that is why I made my move. There was nothing distinct which triggered this need to make my approach and provide you with this adoration. There was no catalyst other than the realization that the time had come. Martyrdom. Further, the catalyst was, of course, the need to replace the current IPPS, who is in devaluation, although the narcissist does not realize that this is what is driving the behavior. There was nothing more to be gained in keeping this adoration confined to myself. I had to release it and lay it on you. I had to pour it over you, spilling over you and coating you. I needed to provide this most perfect adoration and allow you to bask in it, delight in it, and know that this is what I will always provide to you. Grandiosity, latent exhibition of ownership, and the victim being an extension of the narcissist. How can that now be the case? I've waited so long to give this to you, but there can be no outcome other than this permanent state of adoration, which will allow us to become one and preserve that state of affairs forever. Assimilation of the victim into the narcissist, demonstrating the fact that the victim is an extension of the narcissist, lack of boundary recognition, feeds off the empathic trait of the love devotee once again. 10 years may seem like a long time, but it is a blink of the eye when compared to the infinite adoration I will give you, and that shall keep us together. Infatuation, grandiosity. We shall not crumble. We shall not fail. I promise you this. Grandiosity, the promise is of course caveated, conditional, flexible, and when necessary will be revoked and removed as if it never existed, because such a promise was made to a different victim last month, and another the month before that, and another the same last year. This is a manifestation of the narcissist conditional asterisk. That is a seduction speech, coming from a mid-range narcissist, either type A or type B. You may have experienced it. You may experience it in the future, so you need to be aware of what's happening. You may know people who are experiencing this, or could be at risk of it in the future. It is worth sharing with them so that they are protected and armed. Now, after listening to all of that sugar and honey being poured over you, you may feel slightly nauseous. Go and eat a banana. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.